The morning sun climbed over the jagged Afghan mountains, casting long shadows across Helmand Province. Corporal Craig Harrison of the British Army's Household Cavalry Regiment settled into his position, feeling the familiar weight of his L-115, a 3 long-range rifle. It was November 2009, and he had no idea he was about to make a shot that would rewrite the record books and defy every calculation of what human skill and British engineering could achieve together. The distance was 2,475 meters, nearly 1.5 miles. At that range, the bullet would take approximately 3 seconds to reach its target. 3 seconds where everything could go wrong: a gust of wind, a slight miscalculation, the Earth's rotation itself. Yet within those 3 seconds, Harrison would fire twice, and 2 Taliban machine gunners would fall. It remains the longest confirmed sniper kill in combat history by British forces, and one of the longest ever recorded. The perfect storm of necessity. The situation that morning was deteriorating rapidly. Harrison's patrol had been supporting an Afghan National Army checkpoint when Taliban fighters launched a coordinated assault. The insurgents had positioned 2 machine gun teams on a distant ridge, pouring devastating fire onto the exposed position below. British and Afghan forces were pinned down, casualties mounting, and the usual solutions weren't available. Air support was hours away. Artillery was out of range. The Taliban gunners had chosen their position brilliantly, far enough away that they believed themselves untouchable, high enough to dominate the entire valley. They were methodically destroying the checkpoint and everyone in it with impunity. Harrison studied the distant ridge through his scope. The heat shimmer was already building, making the air dance and distort. The wind was unpredictable, swirling through the valley in ways that could send a bullet wildly off course. At 2,475 meters, his targets were barely visible, even through high-powered optics. They appeared as dark shapes, heat signatures, suggestions of human forms rather than clear silhouettes. Most military sniping occurs between 300 and 600 meters. Anything beyond 1,000 meters is considered exceptional. What Harrison was contemplating was beyond exceptional. It was, by every reasonable standard, impossible. The mathematics of the improbable. To understand what makes this shot so extraordinary, you must understand what happens to a bullet over 1.5 miles of flight. Harrison was firing a 338 Lapua Magnum round, one of the most powerful and accurate long-range cartridges in military use. Even so, the physics working against that bullet were staggering. Over 2,475 meters, the bullet would drop approximately 400 feet from its initial trajectory, roughly the height of a 40-story building. Harrison had to aim that far above his target, trusting mathematics, experience, and instinct to arc the round precisely onto a human-sized target. The Coriolis effect, the rotation of the Earth itself, becomes a factor at such distances. Firing north to south in the northern hemisphere, the bullet would drift right. Harrison had to account for the planet spinning beneath his bullet during its 3-second flight. Wind posed the most unpredictable challenge. A 5-mile-per-hour crosswind at the shooter's position might be completely different 1,000 meters downrange, and different again at the target. Wind could push the bullet several feet off course, and there was no perfect way to measure conditions along the entire flight path. The air itself was enemy territory. At Helmand's elevation and temperature, the bullet would slow differently than on a British rifle range. Heat shimmer would distort Harrison's sight picture, making precise aim nearly impossible. Dust, humidity, even the time of day affected how the bullet flew. Then there was the rifle itself. The L-115-3 is an excellent weapon, capable of sub-MOA, minute of angle, accuracy under ideal. But at 2,475 meters, even a half-MOA rifle, one that groups shots within half an inch at 100 meters, would have a theoretical spread of over 40 inches. The margin for error was simultaneously huge and non-existent. The shot that shouldn't have worked. Harrison's spotter, another experienced soldier, worked through the calculations. Range, 2,475 meters. Elevation, add 39 MOA. Windage, right 3 MOA, best guess. Temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, all factored into firing solutions that were ultimately educated approximations. Harrison made his own adjustments based on experience and intuition that can't be taught in any school. He'd been a sniper for years, had fired thousands of rounds, and had developed a feel for his rifle that transcended mere mechanics. He understood how his particular weapon performed, how the trigger broke, how to control his breathing and heartbeat so that his body became a stable platform. Through his scope, the Taliban machine gunner continued firing, confident in his invulnerability. At that distance, he couldn't even hear the British rifles if they fired. He had no idea he was being observed, calculated, targeted. Harrison controlled his breathing, slowing his heart rate. The crosshairs settled on a point in space far above the distant figure, accounting for the massive bullet drop. He applied smooth, steady pressure to the trigger. A squeeze so gradual the rifle fired almost by surprise, the way it's supposed to. The L-115-3 bucked against his shoulder. The suppressor reduced the muzzle blast, but Harrison still felt the familiar punch of recoil. Then came the wait. 3 seconds that stretched into eternity. At that range, he couldn't see the bullet's impact through his scope. He had to trust the shot, maintain position, and prepare for a follow-up. 3 seconds after the trigger broke, 2,475 meters away, the first Taliban gunner collapsed, the 338 Lapua Magnum round, having traveled at speeds exceeding 2,000 miles per hour before slowing over its long flight, struck with devastating effect. The second machine gunner, witnessing his partner's sudden death, made a fatal error. Instead of taking cover, he moved to the gun, attempting to continue the attack. He likely assumed the death was from some other cause, an accident perhaps, or fire from a different angle. The idea that someone could shoot accurately from nearly 1.5 miles away simply wasn't within his tactical framework. Harrison had already chambered another round. His firing solution was identical, same range, same wind, same everything. The second target was in nearly the same position as the first. He settled the crosshairs, controlled his breathing, pressed the trigger. 3 seconds later, the second Taliban fighter fell. A third for good measure with both machine gunners down. Harrison noticed the insurgent's weapon was still intact, still pointing toward the checkpoint. As long as it remained functional, another fighter could man it. Without hesitation, he chambered a third round. This shot was, if possible, even more difficult. A machine gun is a smaller target than a human, and now there was no heat signature to help identify its location. Harrison was aiming at an inanimate object, across 2,475 meters of hostile environment, attempting to disable a weapon most snipers couldn't even see clearly at that range. He fired. 3 seconds later, the machine gun was destroyed, torn apart by A-338 round that had no business being accurate at that distance. The checkpoint was saved. The Taliban attack faltered and ultimately failed without the devastating suppressive fire from those machine guns. Soldiers who would have died lived because of 3 shots that defied probability. The weapon behind the warrior, the L-115-3 that made this possible, is itself a remarkable piece of engineering. Manufactured by Accuracy International in Britain, it's the standard long-range rifle for British forces and has been adopted by numerous other militaries worldwide. The rifle is built around the 338 Lapua Magnum cartridge, a round specifically designed for extreme range precision. The L-115-3 features a cold hammer-forged barrel, a robust action that maintains accuracy under harsh conditions, and a sophisticated scope mounting system. The rifle Harrison used was topped with a Schmidt & Bender 525x56 scope, providing the magnification necessary to even see targets at such distances. But the rifle is only part of the equation. British sniper training emphasizes fundamentals over equipment, teaching shooters to maximize their capabilities with any rifle, rather than relying on technology alone. Harrison's achievement came from the marriage of excellent equipment and superior training, a combination the British military has perfected over generations. The controversy and confirmation. When news of Harrison's shot emerged, skepticism was inevitable. The distance exceeded the previous record, held by Canadian forces, by over 250 meters. Some question whether the shot was lucky, whether the confirmations were accurate, whether the story was embellished in the retelling. The British Ministry of Defence confirmed the kills through multiple sources: the spotter's observations, patrol reports, and subsequent ground inspection of the site. The GPS coordinates were logged, the distance verified by multiple methods. Harrison's commanders investigated thoroughly before officially recognizing the achievement. What's crucial to understand is that Harrison didn't claim perfection. He acknowledged the elements of fortune, the wind happening to gust at the right moment, or not gust at the wrong one. The air density being slightly different than expected, but in a way that worked in his favor. These aren't admissions that diminish the achievement. They're honest recognition that at such extreme ranges, even the best shooter needs conditions to cooperate. Harrison fired several ranging shots before his successful kills, adjusting based on where those rounds impacted. This wasn't one miraculous shot in isolation, but the culmination of disciplined marksmanship, careful observation, and methodical adjustment. The cost of extraordinary achievement, what's often overlooked in celebrating such a record, is the toll it took on the shooter. Harrison was later wounded in Afghanistan, shot through the arms during another engagement. The psychological weight of being a sniper, making life-and-death decisions at distances where targets are individuals, not anonymous combatants, affects every shooter, regardless of nationality or experience. British military culture emphasizes quiet professionalism over personal glory. Harrison gave few interviews, never sought celebrity, and consistently emphasized that he was simply doing his job under extraordinary circumstances. This understated approach contrasts with some other military cultures but is deeply ingrained in British special operations and elite units. Legacy and implications. Harrison's shot demonstrated several important principles about modern warfare. First, that human skill still matters even in an age of smart weapons and drones. No computer aimed that rifle. A soldier's judgment, experience, and steady hands made the shot possible. Second, it validated British investment in precision marksmanship. While the UK can't match American firepower or air support, it can produce individual soldiers capable of extraordinary achievements with relatively modest equipment. The L-115A3 isn't the most expensive sniper rifle in the world, but in the right hands, it proved devastatingly effective. Third, the engagement illustrated the continuing relevance of the sniper in asymmetric warfare. Two well-positioned snipers achieved what might have required artillery strikes, air support, or a full infantry assault, none of which were immediately available. They saved lives and completed their mission with precision that minimized collateral damage. The record that still stands as of 2025. Harrison's 2,475-meter confirmed kills remain among the longest in military history. While Canadian snipers have since exceeded this distance, Harrison's achievement maintains its legendary status, particularly because he made not one, but two successful shots at that range in rapid succession, followed by a third shot that destroyed the enemy weapon. The record has spawned countless attempts to replicate the shot under controlled conditions. Target shooters, using more sophisticated equipment than Harrison had available, firing from stable positions without incoming fire or heat shimmer, still find 2,475 meters extraordinarily challenging. Many attempts fail to even hit the target, much less achieve the precision necessary for a confirmed kill. 3 seconds that changed everything in the end. Harrison's impossible shot came down to 3 seconds of bullet flight and years of preparation. It was British training meeting British engineering, human skill transcending technological limitations, and one soldier making shots that will be studied in military academies for generations. The two Taliban fighters who died likely never knew what hit them. From their perspective, their positions were impregnable, their firepower dominant. Then, from a distance beyond their comprehension, death arrived at 2,000 miles per hour, twice in 3 seconds. For the soldiers pinned down in that checkpoint, those 3 seconds meant salvation. For the British military, they represented validation of training philosophies and equipment choices. For the world of military marksmanship, they redefined what was considered possible. Corporal Craig Harrison made an impossible shot because, in that moment, with those stakes, impossible wasn't an option. The mathematics said it couldn't be done. The conditions said it shouldn't work. Every reasonable assessment said to wait for air support or find another solution. But Harrison had a rifle, 2 bullets, and 3 seconds. Sometimes, for the British sniper, that's all it takes to achieve the impossible.